Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of Hamilton Icons. I am your host and local real estate agent, Justin Little. Today, I have a really exciting guest. We had to reschedule this once, but it's finally here because it's going to be such a good episode. Today, I'm joined by Elise Harrington, who does wills and estates with SimpsonWigle. Elise, thank you so much for joining me today.
Justin, thanks for having me.
We made it happen. This is
Yes.
good. I feel like we connected. God, it might have been back, I don't know, January or February
so,
or something.
yeah.
The day is finally here. It's come. We got the new studio. You're
It
the, I
looks
think,
great.
episode 3 in here. Yeah, it's exciting stuff after all of our
Yeah.
changes.
And for those at home, Justin gave me the nice side, so thank you very much.
For
You're a generous host.
There's right. There's a nice side
Yeah.
and a not. Yeah, you got the good one. Always got to make the guest look
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I guess thoughts to talk about because you're in a pretty interesting field. At least I find it interesting. And a lot of people have questions about it because I think there's a lot of unknown when it comes to dealing with estates or dealing with wills or kids having to sell a parent's home that's deceased or maybe one that isn't yet but isn't capable of making those decisions. But before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about you. How did you end up getting into this field?
So I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know what that actually would look like in practice because I don't have any lawyers in the family. But got into law school. They give you the standard 6 or 7 courses. Didn't love it, but I love the process and the thought experiments that you have to go through as a lawyer. So then during my exams for the first semester, I applied to a bunch of law firms in my area. I'm from Oakville. Got a call back the night before my property exam saying, yeah, I won't pay you much, but you can come. And I said, that's great, like any experience because I have no ins, no Nepo baby options, so like no connections to draw from. So worked there, was helping on some research, really loved the subject matter. What I loved more was just meeting with the lawyers and talking about the cases, just, between meetings. I found that so interesting and just mulling over puzzles and how are we going to deal with this. I found that fascinating. I returned in between second and third year as well, articled there, and then I saw a job opportunity in Hamilton at SimpsonWigle and joined them at the end of 2020, and I've been there ever since, and I think I'm a lifer.
That's it. Well, that's awesome. It's a pretty big firm in Hamilton.
It
right?
is.
Very well known.
Yeah,
Lot of-
it's nice because we service a lot of, regular folks, but also business owners. So lots of mixtures in complexity, lots of different points of view, very diverse. So I'm very fortunate with that.
No, that's awesome. Well, it's interesting you describe it as like solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
Hey, is that just you trying to coordinate all the pieces with everything that goes into dealing with the estates and wills? Like what kind of...
Yeah, it is kind of like a puzzle in terms of drafting. So, we have a big bank of clauses and then I'm looking at, the clients on paper and I'm trying to figure out which clauses fit for their scenario. And then it's also a puzzle because we've got competing goals. So, one of the goals is to make things as easy as possible. So often people will think, it's going to be easy by adding my kids to my accounts and my house. But that just creates a whole other bank of headaches on the back end. And then another goal would be taxes, so avoiding taxes. And sometimes you have to say, okay, maybe the most streamlined thing is to pay a bit of taxes, but then it's less headaches in terms of the administration. So it's talking with clients and figuring out, what's the scenario that you can deal with and live with at the end of the day.
Yeah, because it's not a one size fits all for sure. Family dynamics are so different. I know similar, like when I'm doing an offer on a property, we try what clauses do we need to put in, right? But yours are way more vast than mine, I'm sure, right? Because you're dealing with so many different scenarios. It's always interesting to me, the family dynamics when it comes to people sitting down at the table, right? Do you ever find yourself in some stressful situations when you're trying to put all that together?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because you've got often, especially with older parents, family members, the kids will think they're helping mom and dad by setting up the meetings, reading all the documents, especially if there's other kids that are maybe not so great and helpful and have different expectations. But it's actually easier if I can deal with the parents one-on-one, and it protects them from potential challenges. So finding a way to politely say, I'm going to have to ask you to butt out, even if your parents could take a taxi or if I can go to them rather than you sit in our waiting room and pace back and forth. You have to find delicate ways of dealing with those personalities.
Yeah, I bet for sure. And I know you touched on it earlier, talking about sort of the avoidance of taxes, right? And not avoiding, but everybody's always looking for the most tax efficient way to do it, because you don't want to go through a situation that you're handing a ton of money over to the government. I think anybody would agree with that,
Yeah.
right? Like, what are some ways that, say somebody wants to make sure that their kids are able to sell the home or inherit or whatever it may be? Like, what are some of those efficiencies or recommendations you might have for people in that situation?
So often looking at life insurance is a great thing. So if you've got a cottage that's been in the family a long time and you're thinking of getting rid of your life insurance because, you've made it to 60, 70, you're no longer working, you don't have that income to supplement, well, you're still going to have a big capital gains on that cottage. So maybe you just keep paying those premiums and earmark those funds to pay to the government. So it's not really tax avoidant, but it's planning to make sure you have a bucket of money and, that bucket doesn't get smaller after the tax bill comes. Usually I'm working with clients on probate tax. It's technically called a state administration tax, and that's a flat 1.5% on the value of your assets at the date of death. So that does include your principal residence, which a lot of people are surprised by. So one of the options we would do is making sure couples have property held jointly so that it's not falling into the estate on the first spouse to pass away, and we're paying probate tax on the first spouse to die and then again on the second spouse. So that's often a point of contention. So often business owners sometimes will not want to be on title to their principal residence because they're afraid of debts when they're operating their business. But now once they're retired and there's no, liability issues, I'll often pull title and say, oh, you haven't been on title, let's add you on. That's a really easy way to save probate tax.
And then what about with putting kids on title, or, what are your thoughts on that or recommendations?
I'm against adding kids on title. We always say don't let the tax tail wag the dog. At the end of the day, it's only 1.5%, and there's a whole bunch of headaches that come with adding your kids to title. If they're having matrimonial issues, is that going to get clawed into their divorce proceedings? Are you going to have trust filings because they're holding it in bare trust? I had a situation where dad added his kids to title and the one son actually had substance abuse issues. And we spent thousands of dollars getting him to agree to go off title and transfer it back to dad. So you're just adding a bunch of different people to the table for your asset. To me, it's your property. It's no one else's business. Just pay the tax and you're the only one that has to deal with it. And you don't need anyone else's permission to deal with that during your lifetime.
Yeah. And I guess, because I've been in scenarios where there are like multiple POAs on the title, and then it turns into a bit of a point of contention when, trying to sell the property, and some people have different opinions of what it should go for,
Exactly.
what we should do. So that's always, sometimes it's almost more contentious than divorce like sales that I deal with, right? Because, especially now with the prices of real estate, if somebody's selling a family home that's maybe 1.5 or $2 million, some kids might look at it as a cash out opportunity. Not a cash out, but, I'm going to hit it big on this one, right? So definitely an interesting scenario to be in. What made you so passionate about it? I'm just curious. Like, I know you said that you loved it. What is it about it that made it
I
so
don't
exciting
know.
to you?
Maybe it's just like the other stuff doesn't click. Corporate law to me is a huge bore. Just looking at shareholders agreements and no, it doesn't click the way. But estates, I just find my intuition is usually right. Even if I don't know the answer, I find estates is pretty common sense, and my gut usually goes with where the law is. So maybe we just found each other. I don't know.
That's it, right? When you find it, you just run
Yeah,
with it,
it
right?
just clicks. Yeah.
Because there's so many fields of law that people can go into. I feel like some people don't even know that, specializing in one. They think, oh, you're a lawyer, you can handle all types of law, but not realizing how important it is to work with somebody that has a niche in certain areas.
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So from Oakville to Hamilton, I was going to say, what city do you like more? But I feel like you got to say Hamilton. We're on a Hamilton Icons podcast, right?
Exactly.
But, it's admirable, like the hard work that you did, like you said, that you didn't have an in.
Yeah.
Right. And it always takes somebody special to see an opportunity and work their way through it. Like just saying, like, so if you'll pass up opportunities because they feel like it's not good enough for them or not right, and they hold out, right? But it's amazing what you've been able to accomplish since graduating law school. Well, I guess getting called to the bar,
Yeah.
right? Which was, what year was that again?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting. You think so? You think you'll be doing this type of law for
sure. Yeah.
for sure?
Yeah.
For a long time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, doing it now for so many years, what would you say are some of your favorite aspects of doing the estate planning and the wills and POAs and all that?
I think getting to meet the clients, especially, I love having an older client with mobility issues. Not, I don't want them to have mobility issues, but I love the excuse to go to their house and, they'll show me their photographs of the family, their teacup that came all the way from England, from their ancestors. I love getting those stories, and it just warms my heart. And it makes all those, hard days drafting hunched over a computer worth it.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're like me. My wife's always like, I don't know why she's like, old people love you. And I'm like, because I'm so interested. Like, I was with one lady and she was from England and she
Yeah.
had these teapots. I forget what they're called. I can't remember. There was some specific one and she kept just pulling them out and showing. But I was generally interested.
I
I'm
love
like,
it.
these are
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Yeah. And I'm nosy too. So I love seeing people's houses. If I didn't do this, I'd love to do real estate. So just getting to tour other people's houses is also really fun.
Yeah. When you're a real estate agent and you're hanging out with people, if you ever go to somebody's house, if they're not thinking of selling, you're guaranteed a tour.
Oh yeah. It's amazing.
It is. It is. I guess I'm a little nosy too. I like seeing places, but that's part of what drives my
Yeah.
passion too. I like being in houses, around
Exactly.
houses. So I always just be sitting there, like, oh yeah, you just want to take a quick look? Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
Right. Could always see some pretty interesting things too. But so that's good. So you actually go on the road for your job, eh?
For sure,
It's
yeah.
not just full office.
Nope. Well, we're full service, so we'll go to clients' houses, which, like I said, if there's a chance of litigation, like a will challenge, we want to make sure that we're getting that client in their elements. There's no pressure, no one breathing down their neck. So often it's our obligation to go make sure that their instructions are freely given. We'll also often do hospital visits, which not many lawyers are doing these days, and they're always a lot less fun than the home visits, but very important.
That's pretty big because, I wouldn't think that a lawyer would leave. For some reason, I have this just image of lawyers like, I'm not going to leave the office to go here, right? You come to my office, So it's really neat that you guys do that. And is that just like something specifically you? Is that like a firm-wide thing or?
I think it's firm-wide. I mean, we're very, customer service forward. So we do what the clients need. Even our corporate lawyers, if it means going to the head office for the client to sit in their boardroom, we are happy to do that. So it's whatever's the file calls for.
No,
Yeah.
it's great. Have you ever had any interesting situations you could touch on or
Oh gosh,
any good stories from the?
I had an estate sale where they were unfortunately hoarders.
Okay.
Mobility issues. So I had to go to the house and they needed to sign an agreement of purchase and sale, or because they didn't have DocuSign. So I had to go there, and there was bed bugs there. There were dead rodents. It was fun.
Yeah, I was in one last year. I wonder if it was the same house, because it actually did pass away. I went and my client bought this house and it was a hoarder house.
Yeah.
And literally, you see that stuff on TV, and you think that's crazy, right? But I guess people get into situations because it's just not mobile. They can't look after themselves.
Yeah.
But it was like you walked into the room and there was just a few feet in every room that you could walk in. But he'd move stuff out, realized that all the carpets were just covered in, poop, like from animals
Yeah.
and stuff, right? So, it's sad people get into those scenarios, but definitely to go into those houses, it's when you're not used to it, right? It can be a shock.
For sure. And it gives you an appreciation for the executors that have to do that for the estate. I was an executor with my colleague Kathy, and we went to a Toronto condo and did that as well and had to clear it out. So it gives you the background to be able to tell clients when they're picking an executor, like, you might want your lawyer to do this, but they're going to be the ones clearing out your socks and underwear, getting under your bathroom cabinet. Like, really think about who you want to be doing that personal stuff.
Unless they don't want their kids to do it and they're like, let the lawyer do it.
Exactly, yeah. They'll be paid enough.
Send it to Elise, get her to do it. I don't want John to do
Okay.
it. Yeah, that's interesting. And that's, that's another thing actually, I guess a lot of people don't know. You can act as, I guess, the power of attorney or controlling the estate when somebody passes away, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we can. I mean, you do have to take compensation for it because you're using firm time. So you have to, I always tell the clients that up front, we would give them a compensation agreement so they understand. So executors, as a starting point, they're entitled to take roughly 5% the value of the estate. It's 2.5% of all receipts, 2.5% of all disbursements. So just think roughly 5%. Now, when you're appointing family members and loved ones, usually they just do that out of the goodness of their heart. So that's not dinging the beneficiaries at the end of the day. So you've got to balance, do I want to give this workload to my loved ones, or do I want to outsource that? And some people do want to outsource it, or they just don't have, people in the younger generation that'll be there when they're gone to be able to do that. The other option is trust companies. So often they'll shave a percentage or two off, more if you do a lot of business with them and have a book already. So, all the major banks, TD, CIBC, RBC, they have trust divisions. They're separate entities, and they have whole teams that are able to do that. I'm in a networking group with someone who was at the RBC one, and she said, you wouldn't believe how many sewing machines we keep at the office, because we cannot throw something away. We have to get value for it. So it's really impressive what they do. So we're willing to do it. We would like to do that as the last resort and just wear a lawyer's hat, but it's certainly an option for people.
That's good to know. It's good to know the banks do it too. Because so what happens if somebody doesn't have anybody, like, at all?
Yeah.
I guess they would use a lawyer then in that scenario, right? Like, what happened? I've always been curious. I'm actually surprised I don't know this, because I'm just thinking about the question. Like, what happens if somebody passes away? No kids, no nothing. They don't have a will. Like,
Yeah.
what?
It's a good
happens?
question. So there's two things. There's who are the beneficiaries, and usually they're the ones that will have to nominate who will end up being the executor at the end of the day. So next of kin, if you don't have kids or a spouse, then it's looking at parents, then siblings, then nieces and nephews, and then more remoter family members. So it's trying to track those people down, and then you need at least 50% of those people that are going to benefit to vote someone to apply as an executor. So ideally you're able to do that, but it's a lot harder, especially when you've got, fractured families, cousins on this end, cousin on this end that might not know each other. So at the very least, having a will, even if you run out of executors, having a will with a list of beneficiaries makes it so much easier. We have a situation right now where they ran out of executors. They named 2 charities. As far as we know, there's no one that wants to step up, and charities usually don't take on executorships themselves. So we're going to offer ourselves up if they would like to, or just pass along the information. Hey, you're in the will. Would you like to source your own, or would you like to use our services? So that's how it works.
Okay. So there could be like a Mr. Deeds situation where
Yes.
somebody doesn't know unexpectedly they get some
Exactly.
money from a rich uncle. And yeah, I think we're all waiting for that. It's exciting. So, I mean, obviously you come across a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you often come across in your day-to-day work?
I think one is just client expectations. I know I was listening to some of your other podcasts, and Santiago was talking about, the speed of business is just so fast these days. People expect responses really quickly. But I like to give considered responses, so I can be bad for taking a little while to get back to people. But I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I want to, give you the right answer. So client expectations there, and then also, with will kits, we're competing with them. So having to sell ourselves and the value there, because if you do it wrong, if you don't have a will, or you do a will kit and it's not covering all your bases, which I have seen, then you're spending thousands of dollars on the estate end with lawyers trying to figure it out. So, selling the fact that you're investing in the long term and helping clients wrap their head around that is a challenge too.
Yeah, I could see that. And then it's just so many unique scenarios. Like, I feel no matter how long you're doing it for, at some point, there's always going to be a situation that pops up that you're like, well, this is new.
Yeah.
Even I see it on my end, 13 years in, and even agents, I hear they say it. They've been 25, 30 years in the business, and they're like, you know what? Still, sometimes something comes across my desk that I'm like, okay, I got to think about this one for a second.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm sure you see APSs where there's a random clause in the schedule, and you're like, I wonder what the story is on that.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. You know what? Even the clauses that are in offers now, just because of like lawsuits, right? Our APSs used to be like 2 pages.
Yeah.
Now they're, 7, 8 to 12, whatever, however many clauses you're putting in it. But now we're seeing all these standard disclosures that always, they always get eyebrows raised. Like the house has never been used for the illegal manufacturing of drugs. And I'm telling this clause to a client that's like an 80-year-old woman. You never, made any meth in the
Well, my
basement,
grandson
right?
stayed here in the summer one year in high school. I don't know.
And it's just stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Because now everybody wants to protect themselves because, there's always lawsuits going around. I'm sure you've seen. So I guess you're recommending if somebody is in a situation that they think they might down the road, or not even, I don't know, just at some point down the road want to make the process easier. What do you think step one is? Is step one get your will in order, or?
Get your will. Usually when we would start that process, we'll send an intake form and we'll ask for a breakdown of your assets, list of your kids, where they live, all of that stuff. So I can, troubleshoot, okay, do we have beneficiaries or potential executors in another country? Because that's a non-resident issue. If you're a spouse, do you have everything held jointly? Do you have named beneficiaries? So getting all that together, it's a lot of legwork, and often we'll lose a lot of leads when we give that homework to clients, but it makes the conversation 1,000 times faster when we do sit face to face to talk about those instructions. And then the nice thing too is that's going to stay in our file. So if something happens to you, we're going to have a list of where you bank, where your insurance policies are held, all of that. So your executors know where to start to get that information for the probate side.
I like that you said, might lose leads. Like I've noticed a couple times now hinted at how much sales is actually a part of your role as well. It seems like, right? And I think maybe a misconception people have about lawyers is that, you're a lawyer, business just comes maybe out about, right? Not realize that you do have to be out there selling yourself, right? Like the intake forms, even on my end, we find that if somebody won't fill out our intake form, then usually it's probably not a super qualified or serious person anymore, just like a tire kicker, right? But that's good, like you said, because then you have it on file and then you can best service them down the road, right? So you mentioned earlier a term that I just want to clarify for people out there that might not be familiar with it at the start, talking about if you own somebody with a house being joint tenants on it. Can you just clarify the types of ownership there? Like, so people understand it in like plain English.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. So when you hold title with one or more person, there's two main options. There's tenants in common and joint tenants. And the longer term is joint tenants with right of survivorship. So tenants in common, you each have a defined percentage. So say 50-50, 75-25. So if you were to pass away, you hold it 50-50 with your spouse, your 50% will go through your estate, and then your spouse's 50% will go through her estate. Versus tenants in common, joint tenants, where you each collectively own it 100%. It's like owning a dog. You can't cut it down the middle. So if you were to pass away, sorry for the visual.
No, I love that.
It's like the Midas, but you can tell I don't have kids.
No, I like that.
If you were to pass away, it would automatically 100% go to your wife. It's very easy. So it's not falling into your estate. We're not paying probate fees on it. It's a simple application to get your name off title, and there's no time crunch to do it. So often emotionally, that's even better for spouses as well. If you lose your spouse, you're not going to be functional for a while. So it also makes things a lot easier that, there's no time crunch. You're set, don't worry about it, and you're saving probate fees. So that's the way to go for spouses usually.
Yeah, again, saving the fees, right? And I think some people, because I've seen situations where people weren't joint tenants and had no idea about any of this stuff, right? And then the situation comes up years later. If somebody wanted to make a change in the type of, I guess, ownership on the title or the way you're listed on title, is that a possibility for somebody?
For sure. So if you own it as joint tenants, it's kind of one way. So you can change it to tenants in common, and you actually don't have to tell the other person. And I've had situations where the husband does that, and then the wife figured it out, and she said, "What was going on here?" So that's something to keep in mind. So if you want to add your kid to title just for probate savings, they could sever it the next day, and they're on for 50%.
Wow.
So another thing to keep in mind, that can be scary. Versus if you own it as tenants in common, you would transfer it. It would be both parties on that document. But again, that's an easy thing to do as well.
See, I didn't know that. I just learned something today.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of things
There
today.
we go.
You're informing me, right? Because, and I always think that's why it's so interesting, because there's stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
I would think that there's other people out there that don't know, right? Because I deal with it, but more like limited capacity, the real estate side of it, right? When we're doing that. Another question about probate. I run into this a lot. Does somebody have to go through the probate process before they sell the property?
That's a great question. So, and very lawyer answer, it depends. So most real estate, yes. If you've owned it in the last, 10, 15 years, you probably will. And that's just because the legislation has said in order to put it in the name of the executor, you need to get probate. And that's just to protect against fraud. Who knows if that executor is waving around the latest will, maybe it was revoked and there was another one. So that's to protect everyone. The exception is if you own it as, if you owned it in the old system. So we converted the system to the digital one, and I'm probably getting this wrong in how I explain it. But you would be grandfathered in. So if you owned it in a fee simple land titles conversion qualified, and you have not added or removed anyone from title since then your property might have what's called a first dealings exemption. So your executor would be able to sell that right away, which is nice. So often to take advantage of that, we would do a multiple wills option so that we're not paying probate fees on that. The other thing is if you do want to get a sale done, often I'll work with real estate agents and we'll customize the agreement of purchase and sale and have a clause that it's conditional. So just because you're waiting for probate doesn't mean everything has to grind to a halt. You can get things ready, you can show it and just say, closing is conditional on getting probate. And in Hamilton and in Milton, usually you get that in a month or two if we're lucky. Toronto, not so much, but often you can still start working with your real estate agent to get that ball moving.
Yeah, that's good. And I've seen that clause a lot. And, I actually got a question, so I'll just say the answer to it, about people that always say, is that something like, will that affect our sale, right? If we have to put it in. And honestly, I do find that in some scenarios, some buyers won't want to purchase a home because they might need a set closing date. Right. If it's somebody that's maybe sold a property and they have to move in by a certain date, they can't take the risk of, because I believe the way the clause is that it can be pushed up to X amount of days or whatever, right? So some buyers are like, no, I need the hard date. So I do find that, sometimes it can be true. You still find a buyer, but sometimes it can just be a bit trickier. But yeah, being able to get the process going though is good. So if somebody's in that situation, like they want to do the probate ahead of time, but they don't know what the actual value of the house is going to be when it sells, like how does that work?
So that's where we would refer to the real estate agent. We would ask for an opinion of value as of the month of death, ideally. And sometimes real estate agents think they're doing you a favor by undervaluing it. But then if you eventually sell it for, $100,000 more, this estate now has a capital gain. So you're saving on the 1.5% probate tax, but now you're paying on the big income tax. So getting an honest real estate agent that's going to look at the comparables for, around the sale period, and usually just a letter of opinion. They don't need to go in and, take photos and measurements and all that. Just looking at, the comps and giving an opinion. And that's what we would go off of.
Yeah, the letter opinions are great. I do them all the time for people. And, I think sometimes, and that's where, I don't want to say experienced agents, some agents might not know the difference between the different scenarios, right? Because if it's a scenario like it's a tax situation, right, then obviously some people might ask like, hey, do you mind? And you're like, okay, well, it's still got to be reasonable. Like I'm not going to flat out lie here. Like there's comparable sales. We need to come up with the value, right? But yeah, you could see people thinking they're doing a favor by doing it early because the capital gain is going to be what, 50% of the, right?
Yeah, basically like 25%.
Yeah. So you're paying like an extra 23.5% instead of just doing it up front. See, this is good information right here. We're getting that good knowledge there. I guess so when it comes, I got like so many questions just running off my brain. That's why I should have wrote them down on the list. But so with the POA, when somebody is trying to decide like, okay, I want a I want to make sure that my kids are doing it all equally. Is there a way that you can do a POA with all of the kids, that they all make decisions equally, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's distinct from executors. So executors, they have to work unanimously. You might want to build in a clause for majority rules just to break a stalemate, but otherwise they all have to go to the bank and sign things. Powers of attorney, you can give a bit more flexibility. So that's a question we often ask clients. Okay, you've got child A and B. Now, do you want them to work together every single time that they go in the bank, every single time they're on the call with your investment advisor all the time, meeting with your real estate agent every time? Or do you want to say jointly and severally or jointly and individually? And that can be great. I always ask, how do they get along? And if they butt heads, then the next question is, why do you want both? Otherwise, sorry, I'm blanking.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so you can do jointly and severally or jointly and individually. Often I'll look at where the kids live as well. So if one is closer to the parent, then maybe it makes sense to do individually so that they just can handle the logistic and the other can tag in.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, and so there's different types of power of attorney, right? Like that handle different aspects of things. Or am I wrong in saying that?
No,
Or,
you're right.
like some people
So
do just they have power of attorney for just this thing, right? Like real estate or
yeah. So you're probably thinking of a limited power of attorney. So normally the two big ones are power of attorney for property and power of attorney for personal care. But property, you can really carve things out. So often for business owners, where they have shares of a private corporation, maybe it doesn't make sense for their spouse or their kid to be voting their shares for them if they become incapacitated. Maybe their business owner or their CFO or something makes more sense. So you can dovetail the two powers of attorney to give specific powers. We've also had limited powers of attorney like you were describing. So we've had a situation where a client worked in the military and he had to go up on a job when he was closing on a property. So then he did a limited power of attorney, letting his dad sign all the paperwork to close on his behalf.
oh, nice. And so is that like a time frame thing? You say like they can only have power of attorney for
Yeah,
X amount
exactly.
of
So
days?
it's limited to the closing of this property. And we try to draft it, broadly. So if you kick out the closing, then you're not redoing that again. So yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like you can, yeah, so many interesting scenarios you can get into, right? What happens if somebody's in a situation that something maybe sudden happens to a parent, that they're no longer able to comprehend things or understand things? How does that work with then having to deal with the sale of stuff on the children?
That is tricky, and that's why you want to have a power of attorney in place, because if they don't, no one has legal authority to close that deal. You would have to bring a guardianship application and have it approved or reviewed by the Office of the Public Guardian and PGT, go before the court, get the court order. You're looking at a minimum probably 2-3 months for that to happen. So that deal is falling through. So having a power of attorney in place is great. Often powers of attorney for property come into effect as soon as you sign it. So you don't even have to worry about getting a doctor's letter saying mom and dad is incapacitated. You can just, work under the authority of that document right away. It's important to make sure that the document itself has a matrimonial property clause that allows the power of attorney to consent to sale of a matrimonial property if it's their principal residence. So that's a key thing.
That's a good thing. See, I don't know why. Maybe because mostly I had to mostly deal with the kids on stuff, but you're right. What if one spouse is still living in the other spouse, right? Yeah, having the ability to go and then sell the property, right? Because matrimonial home, like I know that's, yeah, we have all kinds of clauses for that too.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. We see more where we got to dance around it a bit more, like be more aware of it, especially during divorces.
Yeah.
But all the matrimonial stuff. So yeah, this is like, you're super knowledgeable, obviously. I love what you do. I love it. You're giving like the good answers. You're like, boom, boom, boom. It's awesome. So God, you've been doing this now, what? That's 8 years? 6 years? 6 years? Yeah.
6 years as a lawyer.
6 years as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Going back to the start of your journey.
Yeah.
If you watch a podcast before, you know that I'm going to ask this question, so maybe you're prepped for it. Going back to the start of your journey, what would you tell yourself just starting out?
I think just trusting my instincts. When you start out, you're really afraid of, signing your name to any sort of opinion and getting sued for it down the road, especially wills and estates and real estate. Those are the highest incidents of professional liability. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to give clients advice. That's what they're paying for. You can't be saying, you know, it depends, it depends, it depends. That's not helpful. So you just getting the confidence to trust my knowledge, and then also the ability to know when to say, I need to look into this further. And at first I thought that a client would think, oh, you're young and dumb, you don't know what you're doing. But actually, you know, it is a complex, interesting question. You can't know everything off the top of your head. So having the maturity to say, just say, I'll get back to you on that I would say.
Well, that's good advice. I think anybody speaking with you wouldn't think that you're young and
Oh,
dumb because you're obviously very knowledgeable. And I think that translates through a lot of people's jobs and life. And, you know, even in my industry, when I first started out, felt like you have to know everything, right? And you might not, but just having the ability to say, you know what, let me look into that,
Yeah.
right? Because you want to give the right answer. And it's interesting you said about the advice too, because you have to give advice because that's what people are coming to you for, right? And obviously you got to give good advice, right? And it's got to be based in knowledge. And yeah, I never thought about it. You guys do carry a lot of liability when you're dealing with scenarios like that. Yeah, especially, so you said it's mostly the real estate.
Real estate's number one, wills and estates are number two, and I do a bit of both, so
Yeah.
don't get a lot of sleep.
You'll start sleeping eventually, I think. I think it took me 10 years before I started sleeping good at night.
Did you? Yeah.
Because I always stress. I stress about everything. I don't stress as much anymore. I've become a lot calmer. Maybe as I've gotten older, I don't know. But I've always had those moments where it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like just thinking about something.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just replaying it in your head, or you're thinking about something you have coming up that day that you're like, okay, you know, this might be a bit tricky or the scenario is a bit different. You're like, how am I going to deal with this? And then you bring your work home with you.
Yeah.
Right? Do you find that happens a lot? Like you're...
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do. I'm getting better at it, and I realize, you know, you don't have to know everything at the top of your head. You can, you know, circle back to a client and say, you know, I had another thought, and let's consider this. So that's always an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find you're able to separate your work from personal life, or are you still kind of thinking about it a lot when the 5 o'clock?
Yeah, I found, so at my old firm, I did a little bit of litigation, and that really stays with you. I mean, you could have court and you're, you know, waiting by your email to get something back from the other side until 9, 10 o'clock at night to see whether you're going to duke it out in court the next day. So that really haunts you, especially the stakes are so high, the fees are so high. Doing solicitor stuff, I find you also, you know, you close the book on a file. That's the nice thing about real estate and, you know, a lot of wills and estates, because, you know, you get to see something from start to finish and then it's done.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. What's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you if they want to reach out to maybe get a will done or?
Yeah, so I'm at SimpsonWigle Law. We have offices in Burlington and Hamilton. I meet clients at both. Like I said, I also meet at clients' houses. I've gone all the way to Toronto, go to hospitals. My email address is eliseh@simpsonwigle.com, SimpsonWigle.com.
Perfect. And we'll put it in the description below in case anybody wants to get it. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come and do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.